The dreams of thousands of students have been shattered by corruption in the higher education sector. Much of that corruption has been exposed by the organisation Undoing Tax Abuse, OUTA. With us now is OUTA's Investigations Manager, Rudie Heyneke. Welcome, Rudie.
Good morning, Chris, and thank you very much.
How many reports on corruption in this sector has OUTA issued since 2018, and what was it or who sparked your investigations into corruption in this sector?
We received whistleblower reports in 2018 on dubious contracts with service providers at Services SETA. We looked into, what was given to us by the whistleblowers, and we decided that we are going to ask Services SETA for the tender documents with a PIA application. They refused us, access. We had to go to court. After almost 3 years, we got a court order that ordered Services SETA to hand over all the information we were looking for. And only then we could start to really, put all the puzzle pieces together. And then the first investigation report was on a similar tender that was advertised by Services SETA, for the direct payment of stipends to students. And the people that we identified there in that investigation, we followed and we kept track of them. And it's not surprising for us that, some of the same names are appearing now at the direct payment of allowances scheme at NSFAS. But just to go back to that time, I must say, I think that you interviewed a whistleblower some time ago with regards to corruption at Services SETA. And I want to say today, wasn't it for those 3 brave souls, we would not have been speaking today, because that sparked the whole investigation in the higher education sector for us. After the first report on Grace and Reed, we looked into some of the companies that were doing print work for Services SETA, and again, the name of one of the directors of CoinVest, who is now with NSFAS, appeared as a director of one of these printing and branding companies who produced branding and printing material, printing services for Services SETA at highly inflated prices. So once again, wasn't it for those 3 brave souls, we would not have been here today. And I think the country owes them a huge thank, because of them, this corruption throughout the Services SETA, NSFAS, and the higher education sector at large, has opened up for us.
And we know they've made enormous sacrifices and are still battling victimization and persecution.
Absolutely. I know I've still got contact with one of those whistleblowers, and it was just hardship for her from the day that she got suspended and eventually fired up until today. And that's the sorry and the bad part of how the country is treating whistleblowers. These people must be seen as heroes, and this is what they're going through. So that it is a very, very sad state of affairs.
Rudie, to go to the latest report, please recap for us what it contains.
We received 2 recordings from a whistleblower late last year of 2 different meetings that were held with Mr. Ernest Khosa, the chairperson of NSFAS. It took us a very long time to dissect these recordings, because there's a lot of background noise. We had to filter out some of the noise just to hear exactly what was said. But we could follow the trend, and we could, subtract a lot of the clearer conversations, and that we've compiled in a report that we've also published with our statement last week. But to come back to the meetings, the first recording is a meeting between Mr. Khosa and Mr. Ntumba of CoinVest, together with a third person that we could not identify, where they talked about the OUTA reports, especially the OUTA report that unmasked the conduct of the former CEO. They talked about Mr. Khosa's history at the NEEC way back in 2005 when he was suspended there or fired. And then they talked about internal NSFAS matters. Now, it does not really matter, what was the contents of the discussions, but just for a chairperson of an institution like this to meet with service providers is a no-no on its own. It's highly irregular and unethical, to discuss internal matters with a service provider and discussing the specific contract of that service provider. Interestingly enough, in the first meeting, Mr. Khosa asked the service provider, Mr. Nzimande, who should they appoint to do the investigation? And then Mr. Nzimande suggested that they use Werksmans, and we know that Werksmans was appointed after that. And this meeting took place the day before the board of NSFAS announced that they're going to put Mr. Nongogo on leave. The second meeting is a recording of about 2.5 hours, where for the first part, the first hour and a half, Mr. Nzimande and again an unidentified second person discussing a lot of things that happened and how they distrust the chairperson of NSFAS and how they think that the chair wants them out. They're also discussing, that's where the first time when they said that, they sponsored or they made a donation to the South African Communist Party. They discussed meetings that they had with the minister, discussed meetings where other board members were also, in attendance. That shows us that not only, it's not only Mr. Khosa, but it looks like there's other board members involved as well. And then after about an hour and a half, Mr. Khosa joins them and he said to them that, listen, I'm going to give you a briefing of what has happened up until now. This meeting took place about a week after, or it was said in the recording as well. This meeting took place about a week after the appointment of Werksmans. And then Mr. Khosa gave the service provider and the second person a detailed feedback on where they are and what's happening. One thing that's interesting is that the whole time, even before Mr. Khosa joined, the service providers asked, can't this investigation, if the outcome is negative, and if the outcome says that of the Werksmans investigation, if the outcome recommends the termination of the contracts of the service providers, can't they, just move it forward for 3 or 4 months so that they can still do some business and collect some fees on that? And now, in retrospect, we can see that that is exactly what happened. In the press release of NSFAS, I think it was yesterday, they said that they are implementing the recommendations of Werksmans. But why wait, 3 months before you decide to do that? Only after there's some pressure, and I think we will welcome the recommendations to be of Werksmans to be implemented, because that is what we were working towards from day one: the suspension or the termination of Mr. Nongogo's contract, as well as the service providers, as well as the other recommendation that they're not talking about is the disciplinary hearings of NSFAS employees who were involved in the evaluation of the contract. So we welcome the implementation of the Werksmans report.
Well, the Minister and Dr. Khosa have issued denials. What do you make of those denials, Rudie?
I think, it's a natural action to deny and say we've got nothing to do with this, because these are serious allegations. And it is not us who are making the allegations. It is people in discussions with Mr. Khosa making the allegations of money that changed hands, of the implementation of the contracts, etc., etc. So we are just the messenger. what is really sad is that never ever in these recordings you hear anything about the service provider and the chair of NSFAS talking about the well-being and how they're going to help and sort out the problems to make life easier for students. It's never been on the agenda. It wasn't discussed. And one should think that if you have a meeting between the chair and the service provider for a service that's been full of problems, that obviously this would be one of the things that they will discuss. But the discussions is just about themselves, the contracts, how they're going to make money, how they're going to exchange money, etc., etc. So, and that is also very interesting and scary that they don't even think about the students who are the most important role players in this whole saga.
How deeply does this implicate the minister?
I think over the weekend we have seen a lot of students, organizations coming forward and talking about this report. But all of them are saying this is just, the last piece of straw that broke the camel's back. The problems were there for years. It's not a new thing. This is just, another revelation of how things are managed and how the minister is, managing the Department of Higher Education. So this is a collective call for change, not only from OUTA's side, but also from the students, who are the most important people in this whole saga.
How did students end the year last year as a result of alleged corruption and mismanagement in the sector, Rudie?
NSFAS said, in a statement very early this year or late last year, that there are still 20,000 students who haven't received their allowances of last year. Now, that is unacceptable. We had calls from students over the Christmas period saying, listen, we are still in our residencies. We don't have money to go home for Christmas. And that is the kind of impact that it's got on the students. And every time when a NSFAS says something on the public platform, they will say everything that we do is student-centered. And we are looking after our students. They are the beneficiaries of this scheme. Taxpayers are paying billions of rands to make this scheme work. And now it's, managed in the style it is. So the impact on the students is enormous. Late last year, we also brought out a report on student accommodation that we warned NSFAS and said, listen, because of your processes that you put in place, there will be, in our view, a shortage of student accommodation in 2024 when the academic year starts. And we can see that now. There's reports from the Universities of South Africa, the umbrella organization for the universities, saying that at least 8 universities will not have enough accommodation for their students. And, in the NSFAS, just to come back maybe to the latest NSFAS a media statement where they say that we didn't engage with it. I just want to put on record that, about a year ago, for the first time when we put out a statement about corruption at NSFAS, they threatened us with legal action. We had meetings with their lawyers. They say that we must subtract what we said, etc., etc. But we did not. And after, the prior applications that we've sent them were denied. Last year, we've sent them the accommodation report, and we've got no reaction up until now. So it's not a thing that we do not want to speak to NSFAS, but you can imagine for yourself, if we spoke to them because of, about these recordings, I think we would have faced an interdict not to make it public.
Now, there have been strong reaction and calls on President Cyril Ramaphosa to fire the minister. What realistic possibility do you think there is of the president acting? He hasn't acted in response to calls to fire the Minister of Police. Would he act on calls to fire the Minister of Higher Education, do you think?
Well, that's a debatable question. We hope and we trust that he will. I cannot, decide what the president must do or must not do. We are in the election year. There's going to be a change of administration or a regime change later this year. So I think it is quite simple for the minister, for the president to appoint a caretaker minister for the remainder of this administration. There is a deputy minister that can take over and run the department up until the end of the administration. So I do not think that it's unrealistic, and I do believe that there will be a huge uproar from students, especially now when the academic year starts. We've seen that already, and that will put more pressure on the president to act, because this is not a hollow call from the public, but these are real people, real students that are facing real issues. So yes, I really hope that if the minister do not resign, that I think he will not do, that the president will take up the matter.
Because the South African Union of Students have threatened radical action if the president doesn't act.
Yes, and that is sad, because we've seen in the past that action like that result in the damaging of infrastructure and so forth. So our call to the students is that if you want to act, please do not damage your infrastructure. This thing will go in a direction between now and let's say a month or two from now. So if you protest, please do not damage the infrastructure. That's the infrastructure, the classrooms, the libraries, the residencies, where you must go and get educated, for not only this year, but people coming after you as well. So that is our call to the students.
Some people have reacted by accusing OUTA of entering the political arena. Do you think OUTA has become politicized?
Not at all. We have been apolitical from day one. There's a lot of people that make these remarks that we are entering the political space. That's just absolute nonsense. We do what we do because we can only do that when we are apolitical. If we want to get into that space, we get into the space that we are investigating the whole time. So no, there's no way that OUTA will become involved in politics.
Now, I see the ANC has called on its members to pray for the party to renew itself. Do you think that prayers will cut it without performance and delivery?
Well, it is, if we look at what happened in the past 30 years under ANC rule, I know that ANC people, members and officials will say otherwise, but we have seen a lot of services that just went down the drain. So I cannot see how it will get better. Nothing is getting better. The same promises were made last year on the 8th of January's celebrations. So to pray for change and for service delivery and so on, I do support that, but we will see if that turns into positive action, and if it is prolonged positive action, and not only just because there's elections later this year.
Thank you. That was Rudie Heyneke of OUTA, OUTA's investigations manager, speaking to BizNews about corruption in the higher education sector. I'm Steyn. Thank you, Rudie.
Thank you, Chris.